Welcome to Daily Current Affairs Analysis of Shankar IAS Academy. We are going to discuss the topics of current affairs from 2nd of September 2025. So, we will go into the topics today. Before going into that, I would ask you to subscribe to this channel for regular updates and also like this video and share it to your friends who also will prepare with you. And I am very excited to inform you all that our new pre-storming batch is starting on September 4th, 2025, and please register to it. The admissions are open now, and it will be very helpful to get ready for the prelims 2026. So, what are the topics we are going to discuss today? So, first is Pradhan Mantri Viksit Bharat Rozgar Yojana, and the second topic we will be discussing about Gangotri Glacier System and what is the impact of climate change on that. And we will be discussing about the first award, Indian NGO getting the Magsaysay award, and we will be also discussing what is the impact of sea level rise on the corals, and finally certain topics which are focused specifically for the preliminary examination. Going into the first topic, what is Pradhan Mantri Viksit Bharat Rozgar Yojana? So, this is a very concrete step towards converting demographic dividend into public prosperity. So, what is demographic dividend basically means is that, so in terms of population, what is the ratio of working age population? So, this is what we call it as demographic dividend. So, this working age population, when converted into human resource, that is when we get the real output. So, this Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana is one such scheme which will help us gain more dividend from our population. So, this is approved by Union Cabinet on 1st of July 2025, and the budget of 99,446 crore. So, we are planning it from 1st of August 2025 to 31st of July 2027, that is 2 years, and the target generation would be 3.5 crore jobs. So, first time entrance would be 1.92 crore jobs, and next the total target would be 3.5 crore jobs. So, it is implemented by the Ministry of Labour. Ministry is very important, and that would be the major question that would be asked. So, Ministry of Labour and Employment through the Employees Provident Fund Organization. So, what is the aim? It is aiming to generate employment in the first place. Next is it will enhance the employability and social security across all sectors, and specifically focusing on the manufacturing sector, because India is now a tertiary sector. So, once we discussed about the role of AI, how tertiary sector would be affected because of AI. So, two things we discussed was, one is improving the efficiency of tertiary sector, where instead of processing, we should be in the place where we are generating content. And also we spoke about one more point, where shifting the employment more into manufacturing sector such a way that our economy becomes more stabilized, our dependency on imports will drop. At the same time, this will also increase more employability in terms of various sectors. So, part A, incentive to first time employees. First time EPFO registered employees salary would be up to 1 lakh per month, and benefit would be 1 month EPF wage, maximum of 15,002 installment after 6 months of service. After 12 months completion of financial literacy program, it would vary. So, saving components are also present here. So, there is a part of incentive kept in a savings or deposit account, and it can be withdrawn later. So, next part B would be support to the employers. So, coverage would be for all sectors with focus on manufacturing, and employees with salary up to 1 lakh per month would be their eligibility, and incentive would be government support up to 3,000 per month per new employee for 2 years would be supported by the government. And also extension for manufacturers given, where incentives would be available for 3rd and 4th year also. Other than manufacturing sector, it is only 2 years, but if it is manufacturing sector, even the 3rd and 4th year also, the 3,000 per month per new employee will be supported by the government. And what is the significance? So, it is going to face dual challenges, the dual challenges of our country, which will tackle youth employability and also enterprises competitiveness. It is a win-win situation for both the people and the manufacturers, and also it will help in formalization. From informal sectors, more formal sectors would be growing, and direct benefit transfers would be a major support. And manufacturing focus will increase the stability of our country and also boosting the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Next is there is a shift in approach from scheme based aid to the comprehensive employment ecosystem and also the continuity. So it will be built on production linked incentive, national manufacturing mission, Make in India program. So this will help to enhance the other programs also. If we are promising production linked incentive, also we are giving them employees, so what happens? It will be more efficient. At the global context also, this recognizes the changing nature in the competition in the working world. So now what happens? We are increasing, we are utilizing our own human resource, and this will lead to stepping up our game in the global level. And also in terms of inclusive growth, very, very important, we are not just ensuring economic security, but here we are ensuring the social security, which will increase our social capital. By enhancing the human capital, here we are increasing the social capital. So next topic we will be discussing would be the Gangotri Glacier system and climate change. So is Gangotri Glacier losing snow earlier than usual? So Gangotri, as we know, is a very important source of fresh water which feeds the Ganga river, the very important river in our country. And what happens because of climate change, we will see. So significance of Gangotri Glacier system, it is a source of Bhagirathi river, a headstream of Ganga. This will be a very important question. Which of the following is a source of Ganga? And Bhagirathi river, where is Bhagirathi river? It is a headstream of Ganga and comprises of 4 glaciers: Gangotri, Chaturangi, Raktavaran and Meru. So these are the 4 glaciers. So in this, Gangotri is the largest glacier, 140 kilometer square of area, and the total area would be, combining all the 4 glaciers, 549 kilometer per square, that is approximately 48% glaciarized. So elevation range would be at the 3,767 meter to 7,722 meter from the sea level, mean sea level. And this receives precipitation from western disturbances during the October and April, and also Indian summer monsoon from May to September, that is nothing but southwest monsoon. These are the 2 feeding or precipitation form in terms of for these glaciers. And what are the key findings in the recent study from 1980 to 2020? They say that almost 28 plus or minus 1.9 meter cube per second of discharges taking place. So this, we are talking about the volume, how much amount of water is discharged per second. That is 28 plus or minus 1.9 meter cubic meter of volume is released per second. So discharge contribution, what is the major reason for discharge? Snow melt will be 64%, glacier melt will be 21%, rainfall runoff will be 11% and base flow 4%. Snow melt is the snow which is the top layer. Glacier means that the hardened ice, the block of ice. Next we have rainfall runoff, which means the rain is falling on the glacier and the rainfall is converted into runoff, that is rainfall runoff. And finally the base flow. So these are the various discharge contributions, and we should know the mean annual discharge, 28 plus or minus 1.9 meter cube per second, very important. And the mean annual discharge is peak in the July, that is also something we should know. So snow melt has been declined due to snow cover, and rainfall runoff and base flow has increased recently. So this is because of shift in the hydrological cycle because of climate change, because there is warming, more warming present now. So the rainfall is not getting converted into snow, instead it is starting to run off. So what will happen? The recharge will not take place. That is what is the main issue. So let's imagine there is a glacier. So there is a glacier here and there is a rainfall. So this rainfall, part should be of runoff and part should get converted into snow. This snow will in turn recharge the glacier. But what if the rainfall runoff is increasing? What happens? There won't be any recharge taking place. So there is no recharge, the security of water in the future will become a question. So that is a major issue right now. So discharge is primarily controlled by summer precipitation because of the increase in winter temperature. The recharge is not taking place. So the change impact on GGS water cycle is earlier snow melt, so the discharge peak is advancing. So when will be the maximum discharge is advancing. What will happen? This will lead to more flood and also reduction in terms of recharge of the glacier. So reduced winter snowfall leading to and also the intense summer is altering the seasonal flow. So when it comes to the perennial rivers, so Ganga is one of the perennial rivers, which means throughout the year we will get water. But the water level is not same throughout the year. There will be maximum output at some time, less flow in some time, but now this is going to change. The seasonal flow is going to change. If seasonal flow changes, the entire plant starting from agriculture, other plants, everything will get disturbed. So rainfall events is also increasing, like floods in Uttarakhand, Himachal, etc. This is also increasing the disaster probability in those areas. So floods in monsoon, reduced seasonal flows, water stress, drowned streams, all these things will become an issue. So what is a wider context? Coming to the IPCC CR6 report. So they say that Himalayan glaciers may lose up to 80% of volume. So they say that 80% of volume will be lesser by 2100 under high emissions. And also 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, 36% of ice loss. If it is 1.5 degrees Celsius also, that was a recent report. Even if we are able to achieve 1.5 degree warming, still there will be 36% of ice loss. And just imagine 2.2 degree of warming, 49% of loss will take place. This will lead to glacial lake outburst floods. As I told you, it will increase the disaster probability. More areas will come under disaster prone area. And what is a cloud burst definition? If the rainfall is more than 10 centimeter per hour over 30 kilometers square. So this is Indian Meteorological Department's term. So this misuse of term in Himalayan flood has been reported recently, and this is what we call it as cloud burst. So now the next topic we are going to discuss is about an NGO. So the NGO Educate Girls has won the Ramon Magsaysay Award of 2025. So being the first Indian non-profit organization to receive the award, it's a historic moment for the country. So they are working to share the blueprint beyond India. So we'll see what is that. So what is about this news about? So the award has been announced for the organization Educate Girls. So it's an Indian organization that works to educate underprivileged girls across the country. So they can ask you this question: which of the following NGO has recently been awarded with Ramon Magsaysay Award? So it is the first Indian organization. It's an extreme statement. Yes, it's the first Indian organization to win this award. So we also should know about this award. So recently UPSC is going towards factual questions, and this is one such question. So this award was started in 1958 to celebrate the greatness of spirit and transformative leadership in Asia. So from 1958, over 300 achievers and organizations from Asia have received, but the first Indian organization to win this award is Educate Girls. So this is a very important current affair. So what is an NGO? Very important for a prelims perspective, and more than that for the mains perspective. Because in the topic of society and social justice, we will need the clarity regarding this particular topic. So a legally constituted voluntary body of individuals or institutions independent of government. That is what is the concept about NGO. So what does NGO stands for? Non-governmental organization. So that is what is the full form of NGO. So a non-governmental organization means that it is legally constituted, that is it has to be registered under law, and it is voluntary in nature, there is no compulsion, and also it can be a body of individuals or an institution as such, and it should be independent of the government, and what it should work for is social, cultural and economic or environmental objectives. So any of these objectives it can work for, and they act as a civil society organizations, and very importantly they bridge the gap between government and people, and many places they act as a pressure group. So the pressure group is a group which shapes the public policy, which influences the government to shape a public policy, and NGOs are one such pressure group. And there are many examples: Pradham, Akshaya Patra Foundation, Smile Foundation. There are many other foundations which are examples of NGOs. It's a very important mains question. And what are the roles of NGOs? Most importantly, service delivery, some form of service. So it can be a service related to unprivileged girls, women specifically, or related to education, health. It can be of any service. And very importantly, they bridge the gap between the government and the people by creating awareness regarding the schemes. The gap between the government and the people, specifically with respect to there might be number of schemes and the people are not aware about it, and NGOs take a role of creating awareness and also and also being an advocate for the people's rights, and they help in terms of capacity building and they empower people, like they help self-help groups, they help in terms of many unprivileged sections or depressed sections of the society, and also they help in terms of policy support. The same way they help the people, they also help the government to be more efficient. They increase the efficiency of governance in many situations, and very importantly, they have the watchdog role. When I told you the pressure group, how the opposition party has the right to question, the same way any ruling party will have NGOs in mind. Whenever there is an issue, there are so many situations when there is a movie and the movie is trying to give a message which can be socially detrimental. So those situations, NGOs come into picture and they protest and they get it to the spotlight. They bring it to the attention of the government. So in that way, the watchdog role is also one of the important role for the NGOs. And there are certain issues and challenges. What are the issues and challenges? So NGOs are supposed to be non-profit organizations and they have to be socially supportive. But in certain cases, they are not accountable and transparent. There are allegations of misuse of funds. So the face might be an NGO, but what is happening at the backstage is a very big question in certain situations. And over dependence on foreign funding. So that is one important concept. So this dependence, specifically when it comes to certain religious situations, there are funding from the other countries. This will concern the sovereignty. This will question the national security in many situations. That is a major concern. Capacity constraints, poor infrastructure, lack of professionalism. That is also, since it's a voluntary organizations, we cannot demand, we cannot question them in many situations. So even though legally we it is not questioned in many places, this might dilute the objective of why the NGO itself is formed. Most importantly, politicization. Some NGOs are accused of lobbying and working as a pressure group in many places in a negative manner. For example, the NGOs might recommend people for some positions or some tenders or something. So that might be an issue, and also regulatory hurdles. So there are strict regulations and cumbersome registration. So getting registered as an NGO itself is very tough. So when someone is ready to do some social work and they are stuck in paperwork, so what happens? The efficiency of social work might reduce. So this is also one of the issue and challenge with respect to NGOs. So now we are going to discuss the next topic: sea level rise in Maldives, Lakshadweeps and coral micro atolls. So what is the issue is that, so we all know about the climate change, and one of the major impact of climate change is sea level rise. But what is the issue with respect to it is that we are planning for both adaptation and mitigation, but the sea level rise is more rapid than what we thought. That is the issue. We are not ready for this pace of sea level rise. So that is the issue right now. So specifically talking about Maldives, Lakshadweeps and coral micro atolls, it's a very big concern for our country. So it should not be seen just as a climate change issue. It's more like a strategic and national security issue. So now we have to go and understand, so what is the impact or what is the cause of the sea level rise. So first of all, we should know what is coral micro atolls. So atoll is a type of coral reef. So it is a colony of corals which are placed in such a way they are in a circular manner. So disc shaped coral colonies, mostly porites, whose upward growth is restricted by the lowest tide levels, which means that by understanding what is the height of a coral reef, we can understand this is a sea level. So, generally understanding the height of the coral reefs, we will understand what was the lowest sea level. So, now what happens, there is a gap, we can see this in this picture. So, you can see here. So, this was once the lowest sea level, today the sea level has risen to this distance. So, now this distance is concerning us. So, that is the example of what is the significance of micro atoll is this. So, micro atolls growth is restricted by the lowest tide level. So, by understanding or by looking at the micro atoll, we can see this once was the lowest tide level. So, now what happens when the tide level increases, the micro atolls will grow. So, based on this growth, we can study that is why I have written it here, that it acts like a natural tide gauge we can use to measure the tide levels. So, it provides a long term decadal to centennial sea level record similar to the tree rings. So, tree rings are used to study the age of the tree, and by understanding the tree rings, we can get even more informations based the climatic condition, the nutrition levels, many things can be understood. The same way how we are treating tree rings to understand the past, we can even use the height of the corals to understand the sea levels. So, it is useful in terms of remote data scarce region of Indian Ocean where tide gauge and satellite data are limited. So, it is a natural gauge, that is the concept here. We are studying using various technologies, but technologies cannot be taken to many places, and those places these micro atolls are of great use. So, it is a very important question. They might ask you the statement. So, the height of a coral depends upon which of the following? Lowest tide level. So, this can be an answer. Very good question it is. You can expect this in prelims. And what is a key study? Specifically from Maldives, this is a data from 1932 2019. Maldives is very close to us, and recently we all know there was a controversy regarding the tourism in Maldives. So, the sea level rose by 0.3 meters, that is 30 centimeter over 90 years. So, it might look 30 centimeter 1 feet. Is it a very big issue? Yes, it is a very big issue. So, 1 feet of sea level rise can take over kilometers of land. So, that is why it is definitely an issue. So, what is the acceleration in rate? So, 1930 to 1959, it was just 1 to 1.8 millimeter per year. But you see 1990 to 2019, it is 3.9 to 4.8 millimeter per year. So, it is getting more rapid. So, it is accelerating. So, the speed is increasing. That is a major issue right now. So, sea level rise began in 1950s, earlier than previously assumed as 1990. So, it was not 1990, it started even during 1950s. And what is the regional difference? Central Indian Oceans have earlier rise compared to the coastal areas. So, here the later acceleration takes place, but in terms of Central Indian Ocean, it is an earlier rise taking place. So, what are the drivers of sea level rise, or simply put into words, what are the causes of sea level rise in Indian Ocean? And obviously the thermal expansion. Warmer the water is, greater the volume expansion is. So, it is like a loop, it is like a feedback loop. So, what happens? There is a sea level rise, now water gets more warmer, so it gets access to more ice. So, now there is increase, even more acceleration in terms of sea level rise. So, next is glacial ice sheet melt. So, example Greenland, Antarctica. Recently there was a current affair where Greenland here I mean green areas are visible in Antarctica. Antarctica is known to be covered entirely with ice. So, now when we see that greenery is visible in Antarctica, it is not something we should be happy about. It is something which is very scary. It is one of the impact of the sea level rise. It is one of the impact of global warming, because if you are seeing green in Antarctica, it means the ice have melted. And where does those ice go? It goes into the ocean and leads to even more sea level rise. Next is regional factors: intensified southern hemisphere westerlies, Indian Ocean dipole, and ENSO events. Next is 18.6 year lunar nodal cycle. This also affects the tides. So, these are the major causes. Climate change is definitely an issue, it is a global level issue, but regional factors, what makes Indian Ocean more prone to sea level rise are these three. Southern Hemisphere Westerlies, Indian Ocean Dipole, and then 18.6 year lunar nodal cycle. These are also the major factors. So, India and sea level rise. So, Indian Ocean rising at 3.3 millimeter per year faster than the global average. That is a major issue. So, according to IPCC's IR6 report of 2021, the approximate sea level rise, I mean the average sea level rise of world is 3.2 millimeter per year. But Indian Ocean, it is 0.1 millimeter more compared to the average, which is alarming. Next is Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar, highly vulnerable because we know they are low elevated islands. The coastal areas are more prone to the impact, and obviously Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar are at high danger. Next is IPCC CR6 report 2021 has said that the global mean sea level projected to rise to be 0.28 to 1.01 meter by 2100. So, depending on the emission pathway, so it is increasing. It might go beyond this also, it might reduce also. It is all in the hands of human beings. So, NASA's 2024 data says that global average sea level rises rising at 3.4 millimeter per year. So, this is according to the satellite altimetry. Next is implication of India and island nations. Coral bleaching, a major issue because reduced sunlight penetration. One of the major criteria for coral reef is that shallow water. Major criteria, shallow and clear water. Why? Because the coral reefs have the symbiotic relationship with the zooxanthellae, and the zooxanthellae requires sunlight for photosynthesis. And when there is an increase in sea level, the depth increases, it is no more shallow. So, what happens? The efficiency of photosynthesis will drop, leading to death of zooxanthellae, eventually coral bleaching. Next is coastal erosion and flooding will take place, higher tides, storm surges, agriculture and drinking water, saltwater intrusion will be happening in the groundwater, which will actually decrease the availability of fresh water. So, we all know the world is covered mostly by water, but the major irony here is that only 1% of water is that is fresh water is available to human beings. In that case, if even that fresh water becomes salt water, definitely it is going to be a major issue. And the social fabric, very important. We are sometimes having a blind eye towards the social fabric. We all should understand that climate change is a major cause of migration today in the world. And in that case, the social fabric where displacement takes place, climate refugees, specifically in terms of Maldives, are the major issues. And climate change does not just cause migration, and there are other violences with respect to the migration here. So, violence on women, children, elderly people, that is a major concern here. Wars are fought in time of climate change today. So, it is all a major concern right now. So, now we are focusing on prelims focus. So, this is the 162nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Ayyankali. Who is Ayyankali? He is a social reformer from Pullaya caste, and he was born in 1863 in the erstwhile princely states of Travancore. So, birth anniversaries have a potential of turning out as history questions, specifically when it comes to social reformers and national leaders. So, this question has to be something we should keep it in mind. And what is a contribution? He fought against the caste based oppression and social inequality, and he opened a school, most importantly. He organized the Ox Cart journey, Villuvandi journey, and Kallumala struggle, and it dealt a severe blow to the upper caste dominance. So, he also found Sadhu Jana Paripalana Sangam, Association for the Protection of Poor, and inspired by Sri Narayana Guru. So, this inspiration is also very important. So, who was his inspiration can be a question, and what is the Sangam, who started the Sangam can be a question, and then who organized the Villuvandi journey can be a question, and who is Ayyankali, where was he born can be a question. So, it is a potential prelims question. So, please concentrate on this. So, next is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. So, very important. So, it's a government led financial inclusion initiative. It was asked in 2016, I guess. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is related to which of the following? Financial inclusion was one of the option. So, it's a PYQ. So, it was launched in 2014 by the Ministry of Finance. A decade has passed from then. to provide universal access to banking facilities for all households in the country, especially the unbanked. So, what is a major impact of financial inclusion is it led to direct benefit transfers. Direct benefit transfers made the schemes very efficient, made governance more efficient, reduce the delay, reduce the distance between the government and people, and also addressed issues with respect to middlemen. Yes, so it offers basic zero balance savings accounts, remittances services, access to credit, insurance, pensions at affordable cost, and direct benefit transfer. And business corresponds to provide a minimum monthly remuneration of rupees 5,000. That is a Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. So, the next topic is independent drive test. So, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, the acronym of TRAI, has conducted the independent drive test. So, why is it conducted? Is to evaluate the quality of mobile, voice and data services provided by various telecom operators within a licensed service area. So, this is specifically to check the quality of mobile service. And the key parameters: voice services, what is the call setup success rate, drop call rate, call setup time, call silence rate, speech quality coverage. So, these are the criteria to understand what is the quality of voice services, that is the phone calls I am talking about. So, data services are about the internet. So, download, upload throughput, latency jitter, packet drop rate, video streaming delay. So, all these things are qualities with respect to data services. So, this can be asked as a question. So, it is a science and tech question. So, this can be asked as a question in the preliminary examination, and this is something you should note it down. Next is Advance India's Digital Addressing System. So, there is a memorandum of understanding between Department of Post and MAPI India's MAPI. So, Nodal Ministry, Ministry of Communication. The objective to utilize Map My India's mapping platform. This is Map My India's mapping platform and products to support the development and implementation of DigiPin. This is to enhance the visibility of users and enable accurate generation of geographical location. Very important. So, this will help in terms of navigating to the location and also searching locations with more precision. DigiPin, what is a DigiPin? It is a nationwide geo-coded addressing system. So, it is developed by the Department of Post with the Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. So, it divides India into approximately 4 meter cross 4 meter grids and assigns each grid a unique 10 character alphanumerical code. So, now the global positioning system works based on the latitude and longitude. So, here what we are doing, we are dividing India into 4 meter cross 4 meter grids, and every grid is offered with a unique 10 alphanumeric character, and based on the latitude and longitude coordinates. So, the basis is latitude and longitude, that is GPS, and apart from that we are going to add even more precision. This is to simplify the addressing system for the public and private services. This will improve logistics, and then emergency response capabilities will be better. So, that is a major thing about DigiPin. So, thank you so much. Subscribe to this channel so that you will get regular updates, and also share these videos to your friends. And if there is any doubts or if there is anything you want to ask, please comment. Thank you.